This application was the 8th time of asking, having first requested a debate on this subject on the 1st of September last year, over 4 months ago. Since then, the AJAX programme has gone from on track to throwing a track, and the outlook of the future of the programme, our armoured capability, the future of armoured infantry as a concept, and indeed the current deployability of 3 UK division are now all very much under the microscope. In this debate, I'm not seeking to apportion blame, point fingers at individuals, or orchestrate a witch hunt. It is clear that the AJAX programme has been failing for a number of years, and though I will go on to question some of the specific recent decision-making regarding the programme, accountability sits with successive ministers. The slow progress of delivery would appear to be an issue between the Army, the Department and General Dynamics. We can skip over the potted history of the AJAX programme. I know others will cover that. But to paraphrase Rogers and Hammerstein, how do you solve a problem like AJAX? Though based on an existing General Dynamics platform, the Army made so many additions and revisions to the existing capability, it is now considered to be bespoke technology, a staggering 1,200 capability requirements for each of the 6 vehicle types under the AJAX umbrella. The March 2022 National Audit Office report into the AJAX programme details that neither the Department nor General Dynamics fully understood some component specifications or how they would be integrated onto the AJAX vehicle, leading to consequential changes to the overall design, disputes between the MOD and General Dynamics, and inevitably, programme delays. Both the MOD and General Dynamics have been criticised for underestimating the scale of the work, the technical challenge and the sequencing of the work. General Dynamics blamed the MOD for not having fully defined acceptance criteria. The MOD blamed General Dynamics' safety documentation. The contingency within the programme was quickly used up and the programme was suddenly 4 years behind schedule. Issues of noise and vibration were recognised in mid-2020, with a stop notice issued in June 2021. All dynamic movement and transition activity was halted whilst the programme underwent a significant reset. The Army resumed training on AJAX in 2023 and paused again in November 2025. The programme's issues from 2020 to 2021 are well documented. Failure to establish effective governance, complex assurance arrangements, high turnover of senior staff, ineffective programme board, weak project controls. The list goes on. The most stark, however, was this: an overemphasis on achieving its IOC date, which meant that it prioritised time and cost over capability. As a result, it pressed ahead with the programme without resolving performance issues. Given what we know now, and the issues encountered less than 3 weeks after IOC was declared, I would like to hear an assessment from the Minister as to whether he believes this is still an issue today. Initial operating capability for the AJAX programme was declared on the 5th of November 2025 by the Government, and I stress by the Government because there were several stages to that process that haven't been made public until last month. The Minister for Defence Readiness and Industry confirmed to me that all criteria for AJAX initial operating capability were met on the 23rd of July 2025, and following a period of review, IOC was declared by the Army on the 15th of September 2025. We only know this because it was written on a cake in a General Dynamics promotional video of the Minister's visit to Merthyr Tydfil. Additionally, he confirmed that before declaring initial operating capability, I received written assurances from the Chief of the General Staff and the Acting NAD that the vehicle was safe to operate. Within the letter note AJAX, the vehicle was described as demonstrably safe to operate, also adding, prior to AJAX initial operating capability being announced, I sought assurances in writing from the Chief of the Defence Staff and the National Armaments Director that the system was safe to operate, which I received.
I thank my honourable friend for bringing this important debate forward and for giving way. Does he agree with me that I think it's important for the Minister to set out that in 2022 myself and other colleagues on the Defence Select Committee went to Merthyr Tydfil, did a review and clearly stated that IOC was no way near deliverable in the timeframes that have been proposed? Do you think it's worth that the Minister sets out what checks against the Defence Select Committee report were done when looking at IOC?
I thank my honourable friend for his contribution. I think that's an excellent point. It's not something that I was going to go on to cover in my debate, so I think that is definitely worth adding to the record for the Minister to provide in his response. The Interim National Armaments Director, new National Armaments Director, Chief of the General Staff and the Chief of the Defence Staff represent our most senior leaders within Defence. It is hard to believe that they all would have signed off on a vehicle platform that was inherently unsafe or where it was a sketchy 50-50 decision. So how do we reach a point where 4-star senior officers and equivalents had the confidence to sign off on the vehicle's initial operating capability, then received ministerial approval, and only weeks later blowing up in everybody's face like a Wile E. Coyote Roadrunner trap? The March 2022 National Audit Office report states that the Department believes that the contract also incentivised GDLS UK to prioritise production milestones over the quality and performance of the capability, and the contract incentivised GDLS UK to achieve production milestones, resulting in its continuing to manufacture vehicles whilst technical issues remain unsolved. Can the Minister give any clarity on whether this is still the case today, given General Dynamics signed off achieving all of the criteria required to meet initial operating capability, only for the entire programme to collapse less than 4 months later? Initial operating capability was also signed off by the Army on the 15th of September before ministerial sign-off was granted on the 5th of November. Last year, the then Minister for Defence Procurement and Industry stated that the Armoured Cavalry programme is projecting the delivery of over 180 operationally deployable vehicles by the end of 2025. Despite the various travails of the AJAX programme, production has continued throughout the training pause. As a result, we know that the Army has received just under a third of all AJAX platforms across all variants. It should be noted that the 2022 National Audit Office report highlighted that the compressed programme schedule flagged that there would now be no longer time to validate the design of capability drops 3 and 4 before manufacture. Given we are now in capability drop 3, can the Minister confirm whether designs were validated before these vehicles were assembled and delivered last year? The Minister also confirmed that it is anticipated that a further 110 platforms will be delivered in 2026, with the remaining 297 platforms delivered by 2028. With 180 AJAX platforms delivered, a similar number still to be accepted by the Army, and all 589 hulls having now been completed in Spain, on current timelines, the complete production run will have been completed by mid-2027. I believe that includes bringing all vehicles up to capability drop 4 standard. Assuming that any resolution to the current training pause doesn't involve the mother of all factory recalls, there could potentially be an idle factory in Wales. What plans are there for the Merthyr Tydfil factory beyond the middle of next year? With only 18 months' work left to complete, can he assure General Dynamics employees in Wales that they will have a job once AJAX production is complete? And can he assure those employees that there will be no redundancies, given we have no plans to purchase any more vehicles and export plans are yet to materialise? Whilst I appreciate UK defence and security exports sits within the Department for Business and Trade, could the Minister confirm what progress UK DSE has made regarding any potential export sales? One of the main reasons we're here debating this today, and the reason for such media interest, has been because of the social media content that has emerged from the factory and from Army personnel regarding the workmanship of the vehicles. To that end, I'd like to recognise the efforts of Alfie Usher, aka Philly Boots, who has been instrumental in putting heat and light on this issue on behalf of service personnel. For obvious reasons, I'm no trade unionist, but he has been the unofficial Secretary-General of the unofficial Armed Forces Union for some time. I know the Armed Forces Minister has liaised with him on issues previously, and only partially in jest, perhaps the Government should reconsider his application to be the Armed Forces Commissioner. I know the Government is struggling to fill the role, and Alfie's application got binned back in August. He's been doing the job unpaid since then anyway. For those of you who don't follow his account, and if you're a politician with an interest in defence, you really should, between the exposés and topical memes, Alfie's been the bête noire of General Dynamics and the Army, operating as chief whistleblower and ensuring that the voice of those on the ground can be heard. There have been multiple examples of concerns shared by him via social media on behalf of service personnel tasked with prepping newly delivered vehicles. A variety of issues have been highlighted, and I would ask the Minister, if he hasn't done so already, to include Alfie within the scope of the ministerial-led review to ensure full transparency and the inclusion of service personnel. It is they who are the end user of this vehicle, and too often do we ask our personnel to put up and shut up. In an organisation that dines out on moral courage and pretends it values 360-degree feedback, we should make sure that we listen to our soldiers, irrespective of how refreshingly blunt their views might be. The evidence shown on Philly Boots has put heat and light on the production and assembly issues upon which blame has been placed. During the first pause in 2021, the MOD and General Dynamics didn't agree on whether the levels of noise and vibration in AJAX vehicles breached contractual requirements. Given the same noise and vibration issues potentially remain unresolved 6 years later, could the Minister clarify what does constitute a contractual breach? Through 2020 to 2021, General Dynamics undertook a supposedly in-depth review of the AJAX programme to confirm the root cause of noise and vibration issues, identify solutions and then validate them through extensive testing. They identified that noise and vibration issues were caused by the track, suspension and running gear, the engine and its mounting in the vehicle, quality issues including bolting, cable routing and welding, and performance and integration of crew headsets. The vehicles were thoroughly assessed using a noise and vibration calculator, whatever that is, to determine the safe operating envelopes for the platform across different speeds and terrains. This noise and vibration calculator, provided by General Dynamics, didn't measure noise and vibration, which DSTL raised concerns about. It estimated the maximum safe exposure time on AJAX vehicles for given conditions based on measurements from early trials. In August 2020, the first noise-induced hearing loss symptoms were reported by soldiers. In September 2020, DSTL discovered an error in General Dynamics measurements, which meant vehicle crews may have been overexposed to noise and vibration. The Minister for Defence Readiness and Industry has told me that whole body and hand-arm vibration levels were well understood and effective mitigations were in place. Except they can't have been effective, or else why would personnel still today be suffering from noise and vibration-related sickness? Could the Minister confirm that any analysis of the root cause of the current noise and vibration sickness does not use the General Dynamics noise and vibration calculator and instead seeks to use a metric which does not raise concerns with DSTL? The measures implemented by General Dynamics included the implementation of an effective hearing protection and combined communication system, an improvement to the overall AJAX build quality, a review and amendment of build tolerances for key crew interfaces, changes to seat structures to provide greater vibration attenuation, which sounds very much like new seat cushions, and improvements to track tensioning procedures to ensure correct track tension, which reduces vibration. On the last point regarding track tension, I am aware that composite rubber tracks are now mature enough to be viable for a vehicle the weight of AJAX. Whilst there are still issues regarding track replacement, given the whole track has to be replaced rather than a single track link, I note that the General Dynamics AJAX Blackjacks demonstrator vehicle at DSEI had this fitted. I would ask the Minister what assessment has the Department made of the feasibility of switching to composite rubber tracks as a potential solution going forward. The 2022 National Audit Office report outlined that there were 27 limitations of use on AJAX vehicles in September 2021, 22 safety-related and 11 were critical to achieving IOC. Can the Minister give this House assurances that those 11 limitations were resolved prior to initial operating capability being declared in 2025? Could the Minister also confirm what contractual payments were made to General Dynamics upon the achieving of the criteria for initial operating capability in July 2025 or the formal declaration of initial operating capability on the 5th of November 2025? What is the total amount paid to General Dynamics as at today and how much still remains to be paid? What delivery milestone will trigger the remaining payments? With those resolutions to the previous issues identified in mind, we know that there were 3 exercises that took place between IOC criteria being achieved on the 23rd of July and ministerial IOC declaration on 5th of November. We haven't heard of any instances of noise and vibration sickness occurring amongst vehicle crews during those 3 exercises. Could the Minister confirm that there were no noise and vibration sickness issues amongst crews during those 3 exercises? I asked the Minister for Defence Readiness and Industry what discussions his department had with General Dynamics, the Senior Responsible Officer and the British Army regarding the AJAX programme between the 23rd of July and exercise Titan Storm in late November. Instead of a response, the Minister told me, "I've directed a ministerial review that covers elements of his question. I will update the House in due course." The Minister was happy to tell me that he met with key stakeholders, including meeting with General Dynamics after the programme was paused, but much as I've tried, the Government has scrupulously avoided disclosing any information about what ministerial discussions have taken place with stakeholders between the 23rd of July and the 5th of November. On the 1st of January, I asked a name-day question for answer on the 7th of January 2026, asking how many noise and vibration injuries were sustained between the 23rd of July 2025 and exercise Titan Storm. Strangely, I haven't received a response yet, a week after it's due. It's almost as if that's a question the Government doesn't want to disclose. I therefore asked the Minister if he could clarify the answer to written question 101920 and put on the record how many noise and vibration injuries were sustained between the achievement of initial operating capability criteria by General Dynamics and the start of exercise Titan Storm. The March 2022 National Audit Office reports also states that the Department knew of noise and vibration issues before soldiers reported injuries, but was not aware of the severity of potential problems. Reporting of issues identified in trials was limited and slow, meaning that safety concerns were not shared or escalated by the Army or DENS. Has that culture been addressed? Concerns were first raised about noise and vibration by the Army trials team in late 2019, but didn't appear in quarterly programme reports until March 2021. To what extent have we seen the same issue repeat itself last summer? In December 2025, the Minister for Defence Readiness and Industry confirmed to me that of the 61 vehicles of all AJAX types involved in the exercise, 23 AJAX vehicles were linked to soldiers suffering from noise or vibration injury. I'll be grateful if the Minister could confirm where those 61 affected vehicles were manufactured. Were they part of the first 100 AJAX vehicles that were manufactured and assembled in Spain, or were they later vehicles whose hulls were manufactured in Spain but were assembled at the Merthyr Tydfil facility? Can he also confirm whether the early production vehicles from capability drop 0 to 2 that were identified as not being fully compliant with the requirements have now been retrofitted, and therefore what capability drop are they currently equipped to? The Minister also confirmed that on the 22nd of November, during a routine training exercise, around 30 soldiers operating AJAX reported being affected by noise and vibration exposure. For 30 soldiers to be affected by the same noise and vibration sickness with identical symptoms as a result of a known issue that was supposedly resolved by 2023 is simply unacceptable. It is therefore incredibly important that we are able to understand whether there were any instances during the 3 exercises prior to Titan Storm, or indeed identify whether there have been any instances of General Dynamics employees affected by noise and vibration exposure during the same period, either prior to or after the 23rd of July IOC criteria achievement milestone. In November, I asked the Minister for Defence Readiness and Industry how many compensation claims relating to noise and vibration symptoms incurred during the use of AJAX variants has been made since the start of the Armoured Cavalry programme. The Minister informed me that it will take time to collate and review the information needed to answer the question, and he would write to me. It is now mid-January, and so I would appreciate if the Minister could provide that information in his response. It shouldn't take 2 months to work out how many compensation claims have been made relating to AJAX. And if I was the Minister, I would have a close eye on the running tally, particularly in preparation for this debate. On the 8th of December, the Minister of Defence Readiness and Industry confirmed that we are currently undertaking reviews into the medical injuries sustained by AJAX crews, and more details on the findings will be published in due course. Could he confirm whether either the ministerial-led review he has commissioned or the report from the Defence Accident Investigation Board will contain the details of these findings? In that review, will he confirm how many service personnel are undergoing treatment or have been diagnosed with hearing loss following audiometry protocols after operating within an AJAX variant? With regards to when the vehicles will be able to recommence training, any decisions on the pause are to be made by ministers after the investigations by the Defence Accident Investigation Board has concluded. That would suggest that the pause will be lifted after the investigation, but before the conclusion of the ministerial-led review. Could the Minister clarify the timeline for both the investigation, which he previously stated would take at least 2 weeks and so should be approaching its completion, and the ministerial-led review, for which I believe we're yet to see the terms of reference, which were due before Christmas? And I appreciate it will still be autumn until the DIP is published in March. Will the pause on use of AJAX be lifted before the conclusion of his review, given the noise and vibration issues may not have been identified, let alone resolved? This debate's title is The Future of the AJAX programme, and whilst the near future revolves around the resolution of the immediate issues that followed Exercise Titan Storm, beyond that, this programme will need to achieve full operating capability, but crucially, it will be the tip of the spear in our armoured doctrine. So a good start would to be having an armoured doctrine that's coherent. In 2014, we ordered 589 vehicles out of an optional 1,328, below the Army's required fleet size at the time of 686. Whilst this wasn't necessarily a defining error at the time, subsequent decisions, even as recently as last summer, have compounded the issue and bring us to a situation where our armoured fleet is now completely unbalanced. Increasingly so, given the evolution of modern conflict since the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the ubiquity of drones at all levels, and the current global arms race. When AJAX was commissioned, we were still undertaking combat operations in Afghanistan. Since then, we've had multiple defence reviews, have changed our focus to the Indo-Pacific and now to the High North, and now we're talking about putting troops in Eastern Europe as a deterrent to a belligerent Russia. The irony of which is that we still have much of the same armour designed to do that job the first time round. The original plan was for AJAX, alongside Boxer and Challenger 3, to provide the backbone of the Army's armoured capability within Integrated Force 2030. March 2021's Defence in a Competitive Age outlines how the Army would use AJAX in its 2 close combat armoured brigade combat teams and as part of its Deep Recce Strike Brigade combat team, formations which are now putatively in place. We cannot discuss the future of the AJAX programme without discussing how the Army plans to use AJAX within those brigade combat teams. As somebody with a background in armoured infantry and formerly held an admittedly niche specialisation in anti-tanks, I have a more than keen interest in the future of our armoured capability. But being something of a tank spotter, there are some glaring capability gaps based on the information that ministers have provided over the last year or so. Let's start with the basics. In December 2024, the former Minister for Defence Procurement and Industry stated that, on current plans, Boxer will be delivered to 4 heavy mechanised infantry battalions and divisional enablers. But 7 months later, on the 15th of July, she stated, the Army intends to reorganise its heavy forces units in 3 divisions, such that all 4 would become armoured infantry units based on the AJAX and Boxer family of vehicles. Subsequently going on to say, the Army intends to equip the regular infantry units within 3 UK divisions with Aries in the infantry troop carrying role, 1 Mercian, 1 Royal Regiment of Fusiliers, 1 Royal Welsh and 5 rifles. So what happened between December 2024 and July 2025 that saw such a fundamental change to the future of the infantry and indeed our entire armoured capability? The number of Aries platforms to be provided hasn't changed since 2014, just 93. For reference, the current land equipment table shows we currently have 604 Warrior. Aries' role was originally protected mobility reconnaissance support and then latterly to deliver and support specialist troops. It's never once been earmarked as an infantry fighting vehicle. The then Minister for the Armed Forces stated that the Aries variant of AJAX is designed for mounted close combat and is being delivered to the field army. The decision to field Aries with infantry battalions was taken after a considerable assessment programme. I would be interested to know whether the aim of the Aries assessment programme was simply to justify the existing total of 589 vehicles or to actually highlight the capability required, because whichever question the Army asks, the answer always appears to be 589 AJAX vehicles. I asked to see the outcome of that assessment programme, but was told its disclosure would be likely to prejudice the capability, effectiveness or security of the armed forces. I suggest that given the enemy knows Ares doesn't have any armour-defeating weapons capability, the issue around prejudicing capability lies elsewhere. But let's walk that back a step. In my opinion, the Ares variant is not designed for mounted close combat. It's equipped with a remote weapon station that can mount a 50 calibre machine gun at the heaviest. As someone whose specialisation in the army was armoured infantry, I know my way around a 30mm cannon. A 50 cal cannot defeat armour. It is no substitute for 40mm APF SDS around the round its AJAX brother uses. In September, the then Minister for the Armed Forces stated that Ares will be used to deliver and support specialist troops across the battlefield. The term specialist troops is used informally and in this context refers to anti-tank javelin teams, snipers and support troops. But by November, that had changed again, with the Minister now contradictorily stating anti-tank platoons within armoured infantry units will be equipped with Boxer variants. So which is it, Ares or Boxer for javelin platoons? Will armoured infantry battalions be tracked or a mix of wheeled and tracked with the logistical implications that that then has? Will REME light aid detachments have both AJAX and Boxer repair and recovery variants? Where are we going to keep the additional vehicles? What's the training burden of mixed armoured fleets, thereby doubling driving cadres, maintenance training, vehicles commander courses? Have we even bought a recovery variant of Boxer yet? The Army's own website suggests it isn't one of the variants within the 623 ordered. This approach is incoherent and suggests the Army doesn't really know what to do with the capability it will shortly have.
He's making an excellent speech. Just on Boxer specifically, I received a PQ just before Christmas from the department saying they now won't give the IOC date for Boxer and it is subject to the long-awaited defence investment plan. Does he agree with me that Boxer has already slipped by years and we can't let it slip any further?
I thank my honourable friend for his contribution. I would absolutely concur that Boxer is a vital capability, even more so given the training pause that we're now encountering with AJAX, and it's vital that we get Boxer into service as quickly as possible. So I would welcome speeding up that process overall. Meanwhile, in October, the then Minister for the Armed Forces had stated that currently Ares will be fielded to training regiments, armoured cavalry units and armoured infantry units. As I've already said, we've only ordered 93. For reference, in order to reflect the establishment of an armoured infantry battalion, you would need 45 Ares to replace the capacity of the Warrior FV510, notwithstanding how many Athena variants you would need to cover the 511 command variant. Where is the capacity to have vehicles at training regiments and armoured cavalry units? There is no redundancy built into the current vehicle fleet. 93 Ares platforms equates to just 23 per battalion with no spare capacity. Not even enough to replace 3 rifles companies worth of Warrior FV510 variant. So could the Minister explain what the future establishment of these armoured infantry battalions will be? I appreciate he won't have that to hand because I don't think the Army know yet, but will he write to me and explain how an armoured infantry battalion will be structured using Ares and Boxer? The demise of Warrior leaves a yawning capability gap that will be difficult to adequately replace without a new IFE. The Minister for the Armed Forces stated that there is no direct replacement for Warrior, and there are no plans to extend the out-of-service date for Warrior beyond 2027, and as such, an extension is not under consideration. As the Ares platform is delivered into service, tactical doctrines will be reviewed accordingly. I don't expect the Minister to answer the question or to know the ins and outs of armoured infantry doctrine, but he should raise the question with the Land Warfare Centre and with the infantry battalions who will receive Ares to ask them how the platform will be used and what capability will then be lost. By removing a main armament from the armoured infantry's firepower, you fundamentally change the way that the vehicle is fought. It changes the way the vehicles can move cross-country, effectively removes the option to move in bounding overwatch, means you can never engage enemy armour. Doctrinally, it turns the armoured infantry into mechanised infantry. Doctrinally, Ares is more akin to the Mark III Bulldog, yet despite this, the Minister for Defence Readiness and Industry this week informed me that Ares is more suitable to be employed in the direct battle rather than in the close support role. Given the glaring absence of a main armament on Ares, I would dispute that assessment, which seems convenient rather than well thought through. Bulldog itself is due to be replaced in 2030, and I would quickly ask the Minister what progress has been made in procurement of the Patriot 6x6. Crucially, in December, the Minister for Defence Readiness and Industry stated that there are no other platforms within the Army's armoured fleet which can fulfil the armoured reconnaissance role. AJAX has been specifically designed for this purpose. With that in mind, and given the entire AJAX fleet is grounded for an unspecified length of time pending an investigation by the Defence Accident Investigation Board with support from the Army Safety Investigation Team and General Dynamics, can he state how the armoured reconnaissance capability of the British Army is currently being provided, given that statement, and therefore what is the deployability of 3 UK division without any formation or armoured reconnaissance capability, or even the deployability of an armoured battle group from within 3DIV? The parlous state of the British Army's armoured capability is on the cusp of being thrust into stark contrast by the Prime Minister's announcement last week that we have committed troops to the multinational force Ukraine. Whilst any detail on that force structure is currently pure speculation, it was reported by The Times that those troop numbers wouldn't exceed 7,500. On a three-form cycle, that's circa 22,000 troops, the majority of the field army. If they're to be more than a speed bump for the vanguard of the Guards Motor Rifle Brigade, they will need capability that today they simply do not have. Challenger 3 has no timeline, with manufacturing due to commence only once the tank's performance has been proven in the demonstration phase. It isn't going to appear anytime soon. The government has no plan for the remaining 140 Challenger 2s not due to be upgraded, not even a promise that the plan will be outlined in the mythical Defence Investment Plan. And this is against the backdrop that the Defence Investment Plan itself is unfunded, with a black hole somewhere around £20 billion, give or take an AJAX programme budget. There will be cuts and there will be delays. Out-of-service dates are going to be stretched to their limits. Bulldog is already 63 years old. I'm sure it's no coincidence that it will be 67 when it reaches its out-of-service retirement date. The Chief of the General Staff wants to implement the 2040-40 land warfare concept, of which AJAX is a key part, working in tandem with Project Asgard. This is the capability that could and should provide the continuous on-land deterrent along the eastern flank defensive line, reduce our sensor to effective time, and achieve the nebulous tenfold increase in lethality by reducing the kill chain to well inside the sub-7 minute time frame that defines the current front line in Ukraine. AJAX can't be scrapped. The army need it, there is no plan B, and given it's a fixed price contract, scrapping it will save no money anyway, despite ministers confirming that the government has sought legal advice from the government legal department. The government hasn't even considered a viable alternative option in CV90, and to start that process from scratch would take the best part of a decade before we even saw a vehicle based on current queues. Put simply, AJAX needs to be delivered, primarily because the army needs to restore its armoured reconnaissance capability, but additionally because there is a second-order effect, that of confidence. The British Army badly needs to restore faith in AJAX as a platform. For all the negative stories and negative press, the army and the government must work out how to rebuild confidence in its ailing platform. I know what it is to be given kit that you don't have confidence in, to have to use it on operations and to wonder whether it will let you down or worse, and I know the Minister can sympathise with that view. Not only must we restore faith in the platform for the soldiers expected to operate with it, we also need to restore faith in the platform for its appeal for an investor and an export position. The long-term future of AJAX depends on the ability of General Dynamics to sell it overseas. The most advanced armoured fighting vehicle in its class should be an easy sell to those nations currently in the process of rearming and upgrading. We have a history of exquisite sovereign capability that nobody else really wants. Challenger 2, Warrior, even the SA-80. Each of those has then suffered from a lack of development over its life cycle, too often a day late and a dollar short.
Will my friend allow me again, before he concludes? I thank him for his generosity. As well as the delays to Boxer, there are now strong rumours about further delays to the upgrade of Challenger 2 to Challenger 3. As RBSL are responsible for both of these programmes, does my honourable friend agree with me that they really need to sort themselves out and get on with it?
Thank my honourable friend again, and I absolutely concur. I think with the delays to AJAX, we can no longer afford to fail to upgrade Challenger 2 to Challenger 3, and that the fact that the timeline on that has slipped to indefinite is something of a serious concern with regards to our armoured capability. A successful export programme would fuel development of the platform and allow it to improve over multiple iterations, enhancing our own capability, allowing us to benefit from the first-mover advantage of adopting a common vehicle platform that can be expanded with the addition of an IFE and a mortar variant, and putting us in the vanguard of armoured development in the drone age. But that cannot happen without the vehicle proving its capability, first with the soldiers, then with our allies. In a crowded field, this should be a top priority. In the Iliad, AJAX loses a competition to Odysseus, and distraught by the result, and conquered by his own grief, plunges his sword into his own chest, killing himself out of shame at his own failure. The irony shouldn't be lost on any of us. Fix AJAX, and fix it quickly. There is a war coming.
I'm grateful to the Honourable and gallant member for Huntingdon for securing this debate. Now, it won't be lost on you collective that in the audience that I'm not the Defence Minister for Readiness, Resilience or Industry. But I am a former All Marine 24 years service, and now the Minister responsible for the Armed Forces. I can assure honourable members of this government's commitment to the safety of our service personnel. This is absolutely paramount. It underpins a bond of trust between all MOD activity and the government, and it's a vital strand of our responsibility is to ensure that our service personnel are provided with the correct equipment that is safe but also reliable and effective. This is why ministers were so alarmed by the symptoms reported by 35 soldiers who'd operated AJAX vehicles during November's exercise Titan Storm. Now, I can update members that of those 35 people, 9 are now back to normal duties. 2 were found to be suffering from symptoms unrelated to AJAX, and the remaining 24 continue to be monitored by our medical services, primarily for hearing and vibration, and will ensure they receive all necessary support as they progress. I can also confirm that my honourable friend, the Minister for Defence Readiness and Industry, alongside the Chief of the General Staff, will be visiting affected units and speaking to affected soldiers later this week, having written to them at the end of the year. Exercise Titan Storm represented the latest chapter in a programme that's been well documented here, which has been documented by parliamentary committees and independent MOD reports. AJAX was approved in 2014 with a date for initial operating capability of 2020. Today, after significant delays, just over 180 vehicles have been delivered. And the symptoms reported by some of our soldiers operating AJAX during Exercise Titan Storm have led to 4 separate rigorous investigations. The Minister for Defence Readiness and Industry plans to further update the House on this matter next week. And so colleagues will understand that I may leave some of the specific questions, including the 37 from the member of Huntingdon, on average 1 a minute. I will leave those perhaps to the Minister to answer in detail. Now, along with the investigations into the vehicles by the Defence Accident Investigation Branch, as well as the Army Safety Investigation Team, which were set to the Parliament by the Minister for Defence Readiness and Industry on the 8th of December, a ministerial-led review into the implementation of previous recommendations has also been commissioned. This focuses on the basis of written assurances given to ministers ahead of the announcing of initial operating capability in November. As set out in his written ministerial statement on the 18th of December, the Minister for Defence Readiness and Industry subsequently also directed a pause on all AJAX trials to allow for an investigation into a second safety incident reported during a trial at Bovington on the 12th of December. Each of the 23 affected vehicles have now undergone 45-point inspections, with further instrumental testing, including for noise and vibration, taking place literally as we speak. In that instant, the affected soldier received medical support and did not require hospitalisation. The vehicle involved was not one of the 23 from Exercise Titan Storm. It was a separate vehicle being used to establish a safety baseline for comparison. I can confirm that that soldier has now returned to duty with no issues whatsoever, and discussions are ongoing between the Minister and officials within the Department on the appropriate next steps regarding the potential restart of those trials. As many of my Welsh colleagues have pointed out, the AJAX vehicles are built in Merthyr Tydfil to support a UK-wide supply chain of more than 230 companies and over 4,100 jobs. And because of the importance of the programme to South Wales, the Minister has been in close contact with the Welsh Government, with the Minister for Defence Readiness and Industry meeting the Welsh Economy Minister, Rebecca Evans, on the 15th of December. Now, as I mentioned earlier, because previous investigations and adjustments should have fixed the recent challenges to the programme, the Minister for DRI has put in place a ministerial-led review that will assess how the Department has implemented the recommendations of previous reviews and suggest improvements to the process of providing timely and accurate information to ministers. To ensure the independence and rigour of that process, this review was conducted by experts who are not part of the AJAX programme. Ministers, the Chief of General Staff and officials are also working closely with General Dynamics to resolve the issues and will continue to do so. Most recently at ministerial level, the Minister of DRI met with the senior managers from General Dynamics on the 9th of December, and he is planning to meet them again next week, as well as future plans to meet the workforce again, which are in train. It's important that each of the investigation teams are given the time and space required to get to the bottom of the recent incidents and past failures so that we can take the most appropriate and accountable next steps. And I want to be clear that there is no predetermined outcome. Ministers will be led by the facts, and all options are absolutely on the table. As the Defence Secretary has said, when it comes to this programme, we must either back it or indeed scrap it. And
I thank the Minister for giving way. When or if trials resume, what assurances are we going to get that no future British troops are going to be put in harm's way by testing AJAX?
So I can assure the honourable member, and with his background, that the safety of our armed forces will be the #1 priority when we commence those trials. That's got to be the baseline common denominator as we move forward. But I'll just reiterate, the Defence Secretary said back it or scrap it, and it is the evidence that will allow us to make that decision. Now, just to cover off on some of the 37 questions that were covered early on, when we talk about initial operating capability, there's just a slight dichotomy here of where we mentioned a perceived rush to IOC for AJAX on one hand, And then, on the other hand, you're collectively, the honourable members are asking why Boxer's IOC is moving. It can't be one or the other. We've got to allow the teams, the experts, to ensure that IOC is met in the safest possible manner, and any lessons from AJAX, as has been mentioned by some of the honourable members, are pulled across into the Boxer programme and other big capability programmes, so we understand and learn from it. We are also, in some cases, our own worst enemy. Over 1,000 capability requirement changes throughout the programme. As we change the capability, the platform changes, the cost changes, the time trialling system changes, and indeed, we need to reduce that as we move forward with major capabilities. Now, the MIN-DRI will update the House in due course. It will cover things such as the capability changes and requirements, how many noise vibration issues in Titan Storm, and indeed the rest of the multitude of very detailed questions that were asked earlier on today. On British military doctrine, it's really important to recognise that Ukraine is changing the whole character of conflict and how we fight. So terms such as armoured recce, ranges of gun systems, the reason why we built the tank in the first place, to carry a gun, to deliver firepower at pace, are changing because of the development of technology. And so we're wrestling with a whole set of capability changes, a change in the character of conflict, not learning false lessons from Ukraine, pulling the most effective ones and drawing them into our capability programmes that in some cases were set in place 11, 10, 15 years ago. And so it's a very complex system of moving forward. But what I can assure you is we are learning those lessons from Ukraine, trying to incorporate them as best we can into the current programmes. What I would say is that AJAX started in 2014, and we have had 10 years of progress, but also a huge amount of mistakes as we move through. Those lessons will be pulled across into Boxer. The individuals from Merthyr Tydfil just outlined the invaluable skills and capability of the staff that have actually created these systems, and it is absolutely second to none, some of those capabilities that they brought to bear. The investigation will report, or the MIN-DRI will report next week, and he's more than happy to meet both union and industry visit in due course. The Honourable Member from Kent, Weald of Kent, just highlighted some issues with the direct threat to our armed forces this capability may present. What I would say is allow the facts to do the talking, allow the review to come out next week, allow the report to the House, and then let's work out whether this capability can actually add value, whether it's in the armoured recce space or armoured infantry rules, and so on. But importantly, from my perspective, is allowing the facts and the honesty of that review to pull through. Now, I want to express my gratitude once again to the Honourable Member and gallant Member for Huntingdon for bringing the debate, and to all members for the continued attention to the AJAX programme. I trust that we have collectively been clear where we stand on this. Multiple investigations are underway. All AJAX activity, training, exercise and trials has been paused until these investigations are complete. Ministers will receive findings in the coming weeks, and all options remain on the table. Importantly, throughout all of this, and it's been mentioned multiple times, and I've been at the bottom of the food chain in the military as well, thank you to Alfie and Fill Your Boots. Thank you to, in particular, the men and the officers throughout for highlighting these concerns and speaking truth to power. And importantly, thank you to collectively armed forces for working collaboratively with us to come to an amenable solution that gives them the capability that they indeed deserve.
I'd like to thank everybody for